Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a mock test from Chillwell Driving Test Centre, and on this occasion we're starting in a small car park on the opposite side of Oldham Road. As we come out of here turning right, you'll see the entry to the test centre on the left. It can get busy on Oldham Road during the week, particularly with vans and lorries coming in and out of the road, so be very mindful of this as you come out of the test centre and take your time. As we approach the traffic lights then, we've got a red light. The pupil brings the car really nicely up to the stop line, and that's exactly what we should be doing. When we bring the car to a stop, make sure you're not just fixating on the traffic lights. Keep your eyes moving as much as you can, but keep aware of those lights because you want to know what's going on around you. So when those lights change, you can move away more confidently, more safely, because you're more aware of what's going on. We're going to be turning left as we come out of here, and the pupil correctly takes up the left-hand lane as she does this. We don't want to be in lane 2 unless we're overtaking or turning right. So lane 1's the ideal place to put the car. Now I've marked a fault for ancillary controls because on this road I've asked the pupil to demonstrate how to operate the headlights. She has a little bit of a fumble with the controls with that one, and as a result, that's got to go down as a driver fault. She does correctly operate the headlights on her second attempt though. So we'll just put that down as driver fault on this occasion. In terms of planning, there was an opportunity here to go around the bus. However, the pupil decided to wait behind the bus because she was unsure whether it was reasonable to go around the bus. The bus wasn't there for very long, so a little bit of hesitation with that. I don't think it was enough to warrant any fault though, because the bus is there anyway and there was nobody behind, so she caused no disruption to anybody either. If you do have an opportunity, however, when a bus pulls up, then you should be looking to go around that bus while it's sat at the bus stop, particularly where there's more than one lane. Keep on those mirrors on approach. You can see the bus stopping again up ahead. So this is where we should be on the right-hand mirror, looking for anyone coming around us and seeing if it's safe. If it's safe, round we go, and that's what the learner does here. Really good example of how to pass the bus. Keep in mind as you're passing buses, they create a huge blind spot on your left side as you're coming around them. So just go around with a bit of care. There could be something in front of them, a pedestrian walking out to cross the road, or if the bus is already stopped, sometimes people will get off the bus and walk straight around the front of it. So very mindful when you're going around big vehicles like that because our view is obscured. Now we're going straight ahead at these traffic lights. You can see the pupil taking up the left-hand lane correctly and just straight on through because we've got the green light for us. A little glance as you're going through does no harm, just so you know if anyone is going to try and chance the way through from the right. There's always the potential of a blue light vehicle or a cyclist approaching, so we just want to spot them in good time if that is the case. We have got a bit of rain here as well, and we can see the wipers are already going. These kind of conditions, we should have the wipers set and we should be having our headlights on as well, our dipped headlights. And that makes us more visible. So you want to be really familiar with how to switch on the lights on your car anyway, because that's part of the show me questions. Like I said earlier, that's one that I asked the pupil to do. But you should also be familiar with how to operate the wipers. On my car, they're normally set to automatic anyway. However, if you don't know how to switch them on and off when you're driving on your own after passing your test, that could cause you a whole lot of problems. Down here, there's some new markings. This solid white line on the left is a mandatory bike lane. You must not go in that bike lane. If you notice the speed in the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll see the pupil hits 33 miles an hour. Now, she does correct that fairly quickly, so because it's only a small amount of speed and it's only for a few seconds, it's going to go down as a driver fault. If you continue accelerating and it gets quite significant, or you keep that speed for a prolonged period, that can quickly become a serious fault and a fail on your test. So be very mindful of your speed, and if you are creeping over, get off that power and let the speed come back down as soon as you notice it. We got a roundabout up ahead and we're going to go straight ahead second exit. There's actually 2 roundabouts here, and on both of them we're going straight ahead second exit. Now for both of these you can use the left lane. You can also use the right-hand lane. Whichever lane you choose, you want to make sure you steer outwards into that lane. So see the pupil goes nice and wide on this and then tucks in really tidy to the left-hand lane on that one there. The second roundabout, she's not so tidy, so this is going to go down as a driver fault. You'll see that her position doesn't go fully out to the left-hand side as she enters the roundabout. Because she's only partially over and there's still room for vehicles to get round, I'm not going to put that as a serious fault. However, an examiner may record that as a serious fault if there's something there that they feel you get in the way of. And whilst there was a van on our right as we entered the roundabout, I think they were far enough back and there was enough room to not interfere with them by this pupil. The van driver was also on his phone, which did cause them to panic react, but I think that was more their fault than the pupils. So yeah, just be very mindful on those two roundabouts. Make sure you go really, really wide and don't let yourself drift into that second lane. As we're coming down this road, the pupil has a really nice pace as she's moving around the lorry, back in through the posts, up towards the crossings. Very controlled, keeping it around 20 miles an hour, and I'm absolutely happy with that. She responds well to the crossing, giving herself plenty of time to stop smoothly, and she's on the mirrors really frequently too. Every time you're going down roads like this where there's a lot of activity, keep your eyes moving from mirror to mirror, keep scanning around as much as you can. I'm going to mark another fault for use of speed here. The pupil accelerates a little bit harshly away from that set of lights, and you'll see the speed just creep over the 30 mile an hour mark again. It's very brief, it's not by much, so it's only a driver fault. Again, if you do this for a prolonged or significant amount of speed, it's going to be a serious fault. If you keep creeping over the speed limit like that, that can also escalate into a serious fault. So be very mindful of those limits. Just a little way ahead, we're going to be coming to a roundabout where we'll be turning right. Now, you've really got to pay attention to the change in speed on the left there, up to 40, and then the sign on the left telling us to use the right-hand lane to go straight or right, and the left is left only. When we're approaching the roundabout, of course, we've got to look early for gaps from our right-hand side. Remember, the traffic coming from your right is the one that has priority over you. Cars on the left of you will give way to you as you enter the roundabout. So as we come into the roundabout, you see a van coming from the far side of the roundabout. That would have priority over you. And the Fiat 500 on the right approaching, they would have priority too. So we've got to give way to those before we join the roundabout. Anyone on the left, remember, like the orange car coming in now, they will give way to you as you go into the roundabout. So you've got to be really confident to get yourself into them gaps, and watch out that you don't get too distracted by things like this car. The pupil did hesitate a little bit going around there, not to the point I felt it was worth recording a fault, but this is what happens when we don't zone in on our exit and we look at the front of the car instead of where we want to go. Always keep your mind on your exit, always keep your eyes ahead of the car rather than just on the front of it. And that'll help you find the smoothest and safest path off of the roundabout too. So remember, it's a 40 mile an hour zone here. See, the pupil's a little bit slow to pick up her speed because she's forgot about that 40 until she saw the reminder that we've just passed. So be mindful of those limits too. Very easy to forget what you're doing when you get a bit distracted by other drivers, like the car on the roundabout that distracted this learner. So keep your mind forward, keep your mind focused on what you're doing, not what other people are doing. Just noticing the sign on the right there, we've got a bend coming up just after the junction on the left. Now just around that bend there is a right turn where the pupil is going to be turning. Now the pupil did comment afterwards that she almost missed this turn because of how much was going on as she come around that bend. You've got to really focus on your directions, look out for what you're doing, and then of course do it safely. You know, we can't just turn across the oncoming cars. We've got to make sure we're at a safe gap. So in front of the lorry's okay, plenty of room, and we're always looking up into the road. Remember what we said about buses as well. Be mindful of them, be confident to go around them if they're not making an effort to go and if it's safe. It was very difficult to see here, so I can understand the pupil's caution, which is why I'm not going to record a fault. But the bus, with all its lights off and parked like that, is definitely stopped and definitely not going anywhere. Now with the car on the left ahead, I'm going to get the pupil to do an angle start. This is where the examiner will ask you to pull up behind a vehicle about a car length away. Once you've stopped, they'll just ask you to move on again. What they want to see is you move around that car safely, being mindful of oncoming traffic as well as what's behind you. So check your blind spot, stick your nose out and look around, and then check your blind spot again. If you move out and there is an oncoming car, you've got to make sure you hold back and let them pass first. Don't just launch around it. We want to take our time and be safe. And that's particularly true on narrow roads like this where there's not a lot of space to get these things wrong. So take your time, don't rush. You see as well as the pupils going over these speed ramps, she's hitting them at about 15 mile an hour maximum. Between 10 and 15 is normally okay with a lot of speed ramps. If you're not sure, you can always go on the cautious side and get right down to 10 mile an hour. But of course, the examiners want to see safe progress as well as a sensible speed over those speed ramps. So I say between 10 and 15 is normally okay. I'm going to turn left here into this road. You'll notice the sign ahead saying that we do not have priority over the oncoming cars. So if anyone's coming the other way, we've got to be prepared to wait for them. Nothing coming, so the pupil can just roll on through. And at the end here, we're going to be turning left. Notice the people on the left-hand side here, the right as we turn. They're waiting to cross. If people are waiting to cross the road, you should be ready to hold back and give them an opportunity. But if they don't take that opportunity, you equally should be ready to keep moving rather than causing a disruption to anyone else on the road. The pupil does a really nice job here, slowing down to check for traffic from the right before crossing the mini roundabout. That's absolutely spot on for these conditions because it's quite narrow. There's not a lot of view there. So we want to make sure we can see before we cross that roundabout. Up ahead, you can see we've got parked cars both sides. You can see the pupils keeping the speed down at about 15 mile an hour. And that's allowing her to have time to see what's coming the other way before moving out around those vehicles. If we're not sure, we want to lean towards the more defensive approach and just slow down and be prepared to wait. And then as soon as we find a gap, get yourself on that gas. Get on those mirrors as well as you approach so you know what's going on. But be confident when you see a gap, but cautious if you're not sure. I'm going to get my pupil to pull up on the left just here. Again, you'll be asked to do this several times on your driving test. The examiners just want to see that you can pick a safe place. The pupil's done a really good job of doing that here. And then when you move away, that you're checking your blind spot, checking your mirrors, and you're moving out into a safe gap too. Again, the pupil does a really good job at doing that. End of the road, we're going to turn left. Just notice the 30 mile an hour sign there because we're coming out of a 20 mile an hour zone. However, just as we turn, you might notice the 40 mile an hour sign. Make sure that you're looking around for signs in positions like this on corners, because if you miss that and you don't make progress up to that speed limit where it's safe to, you may get marked for not making good progress. And that, of course, could cost you your test just for something as silly as missing a road sign. We've got a mini roundabout here where we're going to be turning right. There's normally a blue sign when you see a mini roundabout. However, this one, it's been missing for a while. Still, the markings are in the middle of the road. We know it's a mini roundabout, so traffic on the right gets priority. And as you see, the blue car, which was on our left as we come round, waits for us. Just up ahead, you can see the change from 40 to national speed limits. So I wouldn't advise doing 60 mile an hour up this road. 40 to 50 is probably the maximum I'd push down here. But this does depend on how busy it is. We've got a van in front who's not really picking up speed, so we can only keep up with them as much as is safe. We want to keep a good following space while we're doing that too. Up ahead, we're coming to the M1 Junction 25 roundabout, and I've asked the pupil to follow the road to Nottingham at this point. Now I'm going to mark a fault here for a response to the road signs. The sign on our left clearly said that Nottingham is to the right. However, the pupil decided to take the left-hand lane and then change position into the right. Now that delay in response to the signs could cause you a problem if it's particularly busy. You may not be able to get into that lane. And of course, it could cause confusion behind you as you're changing position. So that's why I'm going to put this down as a driver fault on this occasion. Now, as we're entering this roundabout, we want to keep on the far right-hand side. The pupils lined up really nicely for that now. And as we enter the roundabout, you may already be able to see the sign on the right of us as we enter. The left side of the screen at the moment is telling you what lane to use. So as we go round, we want to look for Nottingham and get ourselves in that position. Now, the signs always tell you what's going on afterwards. So that sign is telling you what the lanes do after the sign. We want to make sure that we take that position up and then follow it in to the position the sign tells us to. So we've gone from lane 3 as we join in into lane 3, then lane 3 can split into lane 2 or 3 here. So we could go Sandy Acre Derby or Nottingham or the M1. Because we're following Nottingham, the pupil's in a really good position here, and this is absolutely spot on. As we come around the bend, however, there's another sign on the right, and if you watch the markings on the left, you'll see they direct you into the middle. You can get away with being in lane 3 here, but the middle is the ideal place to be. If you're in lane 3, what we want to do is come around this curve and then follow it into the middle lane, lane 2 on the bridge. The pupil makes a mistake here, however, by staying in lane 3, which says on the right sign there, Derby and M1 South. So now we've got the choice of either going round the roundabout entirely or trying to change lane if it's safe. The pupil makes the decision to go round the roundabout entirely because of the van, which was on our left, preventing us from moving over. So if you find yourself on a roundabout like this, you're too far right, then just go round it again. From this point here, notice how the pupil moves over towards the middle position. We should be covering our left mirror at this point just to make sure we're safe. Don't just move without looking, cover that left mirror, and move out into the middle position, because often people in that left-hand lane will cut in thinking the lane's for them. As we come around the top of the roundabout, you'll see that leads us straight into the left-hand position on the bridge, and that's going to take us straight off towards Nottingham at the next exit. This is what we should have done the first time round. However, going round again is not a problem in itself as long as you do it safely. As we're leaving this roundabout, you see the pupils lined up on the left, and we're building our speed fairly quickly as we come up the ramp. This is a slip road onto a national speed limit dual carriageway, so we want to get that speed up quite quickly. We want to get on the right mirrors and that right signal as we're coming up towards the end, and make sure we're safe and lined up with a gap to just slip in to the first lane of the main road. The pupil does a really, really nice job of that. Again, it's all about timing it with the gaps and making sure your progress matches the road. If you're trying to join in too slowly, you are never going to make it, because everyone's going to be catching up on you, and then you'll cause the traffic behind to bunch up. Equally, going too fast for the traffic that's on that road can cause you to go up the left side of people and have to brake quite hard as you get near the end. We want to look for that traffic to match the speed so we can slip into a gap, because then our speed will be matched with the gap rather than us having to adjust the speed as we go into the gap. Up ahead, we're going to be following the direction towards Long Eaton, and that's going to require us to move over to the right in a moment. Notice the 40-mile-an-hour sign here, so we've got to make sure the speed comes down. My advice here is come off the gas nice and early. Don't brake, because the hill will slow you down anyway. If you do brake, you'll end up dropping your speed further than you realise if you're not careful. When we do our lane change, mirrors and signal, don't just drift over. You've got to make sure it's safe before you move into that gap, particularly with the drop in speed, because cars behind may still be doing 60, 70 mile an hour as they come past that 40 sign. See the sign on the left? That tells us we need lane 3 as we come up to the roundabout. So my advice here again is mirror signal, move into the lane, then cancel the signal, because now you're not turning right, you're going straight into the roundabout. From this position, you can take up either of the lanes inside the roundabout. The cars on the left of you should bear left into the roundabout itself. But of course, if you choose to take the left-hand lane, we want to be covering that mirror to make sure nobody's trying to cut in from that center lane there. So the van there, you can see, bears off to the left. The markings there are designed to separate us, and we can take the left-hand lane if it's safe. If you do end up in the right-hand lane like this pupil, it's not the end of the world. We just make our way around, and after this set of lights, once we're building our speed up, we can look to move back to the left-hand side. So again, checking those mirrors, telling people what you want to do, and gradually bringing yourself over into a gap. It's much easier if you can get your speed up and then try and change lane rather than trying to do it as you move off, because of course then everyone's trying to push forward and get into their own position. So get yourself moving like this pupil has, then check your mirrors, then signal, and then move over. And that means everyone's already spread out a little bit more, so it's a little more easy to change position. We're down into a 30 zone here as well, so be mindful of that. And then of course we've got another set of lights where we've got Toten tram stop on the left. This is a really common place for pupils to go to do their parking manoeuvres, bay parking manoeuvres. And in the spirit of keeping things boring and predictable, that's exactly what I'm going to get my pupil to do on this mock test. There are some new speed ramps in the tram stop we want to be very careful of. You can see these ones here. They're very, very steep. You want to slow right down and go over them really, really slowly, else you'll be bouncing out your seat as you go over them. At the mini roundabout, usually the examiners will take you right third exit. So again, it's a roundabout, watch for cars from your right. And then we've got another ramp to watch out for as we leave that roundabout. So again, very, very slow over them. Watch your mirrors for anyone behind you as well as you slow down, just so you're covering your back and you're keeping yourself safe. The examiners will normally ask you to do a forward or reverse bay park before that set of hedges that you can see just ahead of us. Now, I'm going to get my pupil to do a forward bay park. Now, the pupil is a little bit wobbly as she goes to enter the space and sort of corrects herself away from the space and then back in again. A little bit of confusion maybe as to which space she was lining up with. However, the maneuver in itself, she ends up with the car pretty much in the space. As long as all four wheels are within the lines, then you are not going to get marked for that. The main thing here is take your time, keep your eyes up and ahead, and don't look in the mirrors and backwards until the car's stopped. See how wide the front of my car is before going into this space? Now, the result of this, of course, is the pupil is actually touching the line on the left. And whilst you would be okay with this and you could pick up a driver fault but still pass, she's not happy with this and wants to correct it. So bringing the car back out of the space, make sure you're doing it slowly, make sure you're looking over your shoulders, and then bring the car back in a better position. You'll pick up a driver fault for doing this, but that's better than being over the line and failing your test for not being in the space. So if you're not happy with where the car is when you finish your maneuver, make sure you correct it. When we leave the space, I've asked the pupil to reverse to the left, and you can see the car swinging round so it faces to the right. Don't get confused with which way to steer. If the examiner says reverse to the left, just steer left, and that will face you towards where the examiner wants you to be. So in this case, steering left brings the car out to face the exit. As we come up, again, remember those speed ramps, very, very, very slowly as you go over them, watching your mirrors, and we're going left at the mini roundabout, then left at the traffic lights, and that will bring us out onto the main road. Notice how the pupil just mispositions the car there. She's more in the middle than the left as she goes over that ramp. Now, the change in position in itself isn't a problem, and the gap on the left isn't big enough for anyone really to be there. However, I'd like to see those mirrors checked just to be on the safe side. That's why I'm going to record that as a driver fault. Up ahead, we're going to be taking a right turn, and I'm going to record a fault for the approach speed. See, we're still doing 25 miles an hour as we get close to that junction. The pupil is a little bit firm on the brakes to stop. If this would have been better planned, we probably could have crossed in that gap in front of the lorry. However, the approach was a little bit quick. And like I say, the braking was a little bit on the firm side, so I'm going to record that as a fault. Even though it didn't escalate into anything more than that, it could very quickly become a problem. Another pull up on the left before moving off. This one's uphill. You will normally get a hill start when you do this. Be very mindful of your blind spot. On this occasion, the pupil forgot to look over her right shoulder just before going. The little delay in her moving off was her remembering that blind spot and then checking it. So I'm going to give a driver fault for that one. There was nothing around, so no real issue caused. But if you miss those blind spots, you are going to rack up those faults. And if you keep doing it, it's going to result in a serious fault for you repeating the same mistake over and over. At the end of this road, we're turning left. This housing estate has some quite blind junctions, so we want to take our time on these turns. The pupil does a really nice job just coming up slowly, bringing the nose of the car in, just making sure she's tucked in as she comes out of that turn, and that she had time to look around and make sure nothing was coming down the hill from the right-hand side. Sometimes people come steaming down these roads, so we just want to make sure we've got time to see them before we cross into that new road. Just ahead, we've got an oncoming car. The pupil makes a really nice decision there to let them through before moving out. Whenever you do this, keep those mirrors covered before you move out as well, just so you know what's going on behind. I am going to pick up a fault for the planning here. If you notice, the pupil's out on the wrong side of the road to pass the silver car very, very early, and that means if someone comes into the road from the other side, one of us is going to have to react, and that's going to become a very high risk fault. So that would go as a serious fault if someone come into the road. Because no one did, driver fault on this occasion. Be very, very careful not to put yourself in that situation. However, stay in as long as you can and commit to going round that parked car as late as you can without getting too close to it, of course. So it's all about slowing down, using your mirrors, and just being more mindful of what could be coming the other way. At the end here, we are turning right. We were supposed to take the last turn, however, the pupil just overlooked the sat nav there. But that's not an issue in itself. If you take a wrong turn, you're not going to get faulted as long as you do it safely. So because the pupil didn't do anything on approach to that turn, such as check a mirror, slow down signal, and then miss it, it doesn't cause any issues. So there's not going to be a fault recorded for it. Sometimes at the end of roads like this, it can get very busy. We can be waiting a little while for a gap. Try to keep yourself nice and calm and relaxed. Don't start feeling like you've got to go because you've been waiting a while. You've just got to wait for a safe gap. And until you see a safe gap, there's no point in rushing yourself and getting stressed about it. Up ahead, we're going to be going left at the traffic lights, and the lanes are going to split out to separate the left and straight traffic. What we want to do here is cut into that left-hand lane across the lines. If you're going straight, you'd follow the lines outwards into the right-hand lane on approach there. So pupil does really nicely here, checking the mirrors, signalling on approach. This turn in itself is quite tight, so you want to make sure your speed is right down as you take this corner. Being stopped at the lights means you have to build up that momentum, so you don't already have the momentum there when you make the turn. However, if you're coming through on a green light, the potential is that you may not slow down enough for the corner because it does look quite wide from here. As you turn in, however, you'll see that the road stays wide initially to allow room for HGVs to swing around it. However, we're not HGV, so we don't want to be swinging wide as we come around that corner. We want to stick tight to the left as we come around it. Notice the filter light here allowing the pupil to go. Be very attentive to those because they're easy to overlook, especially if you're sat looking at the lights on the right, because the filter light will not appear on that side. So if you're intent on making a left turn, make sure you look at the lights on the left of you rather than the right. I've mentioned this a few times on my other videos. As you come around this bend here, some pupils see the 20-mile-an-hour sign on the left-hand side. You'll notice, however, that it's inside the barracks on the left. It's not on the roadside. So it does not apply to us on the road. It applies to vehicles inside that complex. So do not slow down to 20. It is a 30-mile-an-hour road. As we come around this bend, you'll notice a sign on the left warning you about the roundabout up ahead. We'll be turning right third exit and then left at the traffic lights. Now, knowing that second turn is quite important to get yourself in the correct position. As we come around the roundabout, be mindful not to go onto those white markings and that lowered curb. Just like the Jeep in front, we want to stay nice and wide. Pupil does a really nice job of that. Left signal to leave the roundabout, and because we're going left at the lights, left-hand lane. As we approach the lights, we do have a left filter lane, and that means that all the traffic on the left will go before the cars on the right. So again, we want to watch for the lights on the left-hand side to give you that arrow while the other light stays on red. If your mind's on the right-hand lights, you're not going to see it, and if you're first in queue and you don't see it, you're going to get a serious fault for not responding to the traffic lights. As we make the turn, notice on the far side, the light on its own. If you're at the front of the queue, that's the easiest one to look for. Now the pupil goes straight into the right-hand lane, and that's absolutely fine on this occasion because we do want to turn right up ahead. She did start looking at the left mirror and saying she was going to move left. She recognized that she should be in the left-hand lane ideally because of those arrows as well, telling people to move in. However, we're turning right, so I've told her stay in the right-hand lane because of that right turn. We've got a filter arrow here. Notice we're turning right and the arrow's on the right of us, and that gives us a clear pass across the oncoming cars. They're all on red while we get that green arrow. This brings us back into the test centre, which is on the right as we come down this road. However, we're going to go into the car park on the left where we started. As I've said in other videos, we want to avoid interfering with tests that are actually going on. That brings this mock test to an end. I hope that you found the video useful in preparing for your own test. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll keep them coming. Thank you again, and God bless.